Okay, folks, it finally happened. I made my first Comicsgate purchase. What did I buy? Well, of course, it's going to be something in the Cyberfrog realm. You'll recall that in a previous video, one of the things I was complaining about a great deal was the high price point of entry into Comicsgate and other independent comic book creations. And $90 to get Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, which is priced at $30, Cyberfrog 1998 priced at 10, and then the two issues comprising the package that comes with Cyberfrog 2 Wrecked Planet and also Salamandroid Death Sting. That's at $50. That's $90 for the whole set, and that was just way out of my price range. Now, I did want to see if I could get at least the original Cyberfrog collection, and it turns out that there is a collected edition that's considerably cheaper. Instead of paying $40 for both issues, you can pay $20 for this Ultimate Cyberfrog Bloodhoney Silver Foil Embossed Edition. Now, what's even better than that is I happened to cross a sale on dinged and damaged copies that put the price point down to $10. Now, at that point, I was pretty much sold, but I was still Scrooge McDuckin' a bit because I had yet to see any of the interior contents, and I don't like to buy comics sight unseen. And by the way, this is a shout out to Eric July, who his Ripperverse, of course, has conquered independent comics creation by drawing in $3.5 million already. Kudos to him. But if you want to get more money, you really need to start showing people the goods. And I mean, I'm not saying that you're going to get another, 1.2 million on top of that, but I mean, every little bit helps. And if you want to draw more people in, like myself, then one of the things you need to do is do like Ethan Van Sciver did and release, a few pages. In this case, he released the entire first chapter of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney on as one of his updates. Now, this is a preview. It's not the finished edition, but it was enough to get me to see the comic itself, to see the quality of the writing, which is ultimately what's important. I mean, yeah, you can have a lot of pretty pictures, but if you don't have good writing behind it, I mean, it's just as bad as if you had some stick figure drawings. So, with the writing and the art together, and with me finally being able to see this for myself, and especially the way that this chapter ends, I tell you what, I really wanted to see what happened next. So that got me from Scrooge McDuck into Desperate Fry. So I did go ahead and buy one of these dinged and damaged copies. I think he sold out of these, so you'd have to go back and buy the $20 copy. But I can tell you from what I bought that it is worth reading. And what I want to do right now is take you through those 17 pages that he's got on his Indiegogo update, and go ahead and preview these and kind of show you some of the good and the bad that's in here. Because, like I said, this is a preview version, and so there's portions of this that most of this makes it into the finished copy. There's some portions of it that don't. For example, the font. You'll notice that there is this like cutesy font that's very complex. You have the green font going, and it's very technical around the borders, and you have a lot of emphasis on particular words and names. That does not actually appear in the finished copy, and I think that is an improvement, because when you are reading a comic book, you really don't want to waste a lot of mental energy trying to process a different color font and try and process the different kind of border styles as if maybe there's some kind of clue hidden in the borders and stuff like that. It really makes it simple to look at a very clean font and a very clean border style and just run with that for the most part. And he does, and that's kudos to him for figuring that out early on. But most of the things that I see from going from the preview to the finished product are improvements. There were very few things that I saw that I think actually hurt in some aspects, but and I will be mentioning those. Now, what qualifies me at all to make comments like this on somebody's work? Well, I have actually been in the comic book business myself for a brief period of time. Came out with a couple of number one comics in 1998, and I was responsible for the scripting and the lettering. So I would be the one positioning these dialogue balloons. And believe it or not, there's actually kind of a science to doing this kind of stuff, because you want to make sure that your reader's eyes go in the proper sequence, going from left to right, up to down and diagonally upper left to lower right. It's not always a natural thing, and so sometimes if you'll see some people doing their placements and getting weird with it, you can throw the reader off. And I actually contributed a couple of suggestions that made it into Cyberfrog 2 Wrecked Planet. Yes, I helped. There was a suggestion I made about taking these dialogue balloons and moving them lower so that the reader's eyes would more naturally jump from this balloon to where they were supposed to go next, which is this balloon, except with these being so high up, it wound up kind of dragging the reader's eyes down here. So I figure, okay, move that down there, and you'll have a much cleaner read. The reader will go in the direction you expect. And also on an earlier page, I just found this out on a live stream that Ethan himself told me about on here, that he had gotten rid of this stuttery dialogue balloon from Heather and changed it to a dialogue balloon by Cyberfrog that really makes the page flow a whole lot better. In fact, this particular page is a real gem after that change was made. So starting from the beginning, I have to applaud the brilliance just of these two opening pages. These two opening pages, if you're not familiar with the comic book industry, if you're not already in tune with a lot of the old properties, DC Comics and Marvel, you're probably not going to clue in on what's going on here. But you see this green-tinged planet with the giant reddish-yellow sun in the background. If you're just a new reader to comics, you're going to look at this and think, this is an awesome page. And it is. Totally is. And you see the starship lifting off from the planet's surface and then flying through the cosmos until it approaches Earth. If you are a longtime comics reader, what you will recognize is that this is pretty much what you would see if you were showing a Superman origin. And this is on purpose. Ethan Van Sciver has been recorded in one of his early Cyberfrog editorial columns saying that one of his conceptions about Cyberfrog is that this is a Superman story gone wrong. This is what would happen if instead of Superman being human, you wound up with Superman in the form of a frog, a cybernetic frog that people were scared of and afraid of. And how would he turn out in that case? So this is a really, really brilliant thing. I wasn't really sure whether he intended to do this or not. Now that I know that he did, I mean, it's marvelous to see it. So you see the Cyberfrog, or the ship Chelsin, that is Cyberfrog's mother, lifting off from the planet Bloodhoney, heading toward Earth, eventually crash landing on Earth and in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And here is where I start to have a little bit of problem with the artwork, because here's our first view of the Chelsin ship rising from the swamp, and I swear I cannot tell what this is all supposed to be. I mean, I know from the next picture, if you look over and you can see Chelsin in a more kind of amphibious configuration, but this ship, I guess it looks like it's kind of unfolding and unwrapping, but not in any clear way. I'm looking at this and wondering, okay, is there an arm coming this way? Is that a leg going this way? I'm not exactly sure what it is I'm looking at. And so I just get a little bit of annoyed at this particular picture, just because it's our first chance to see what Chelsin looks like, and it's so obscured by the falling water and just the arms and legs jutting out at these weird angles that I can't really figure out. That kind of spoils it for me. But anyway, moving on to the next page, we see Chelsin talking about how the plan was originally to find a troop of Boy Scouts and merge the DNA of Chelsin with the DNA of the Boy Scouts to create cybernetic humans. And these humans would become the protectors of Earth. Well, of course, there's no Boy Scouts in sight. It's nighttime, and maybe it's not even the right time of the year for the Boy Scout troop to be out there. So instead, the first life form that's encountered is this little tree frog, and that becomes the subject of the Cyberfrog template. Now, there's a little bit of dialogue missteps in here, and one of them is caught and already removed from the finished version, which is the word instead repeated a second time. The word instead was here. It's also put here. It's kind of a little bit of a delay that isn't really necessary, and that was caught originally and removed from the finished version. However, there's a little bit of a snag in this sequence of dialogue here, where what you get is seeking the genetic code that would have been absorbed at that moment from two parents. And what the description is trying to go for here is to say that this is what the process of creating the cybernetic warrior should have been like, but instead we're going to get this. The problem here is that would have been absorbed, we actually do get genetic code absorbed from two parents. This is a part of the process that actually does take place. And so we don't need to say would have been absorbed. What we need to say is seeking the genetic code that would be absorbed at that moment from two parents. And then the instead applies solely to who the second parent is. The second parent was supposed to be a Boy Scout. Instead, it turns out to be a frog. So now in the next couple of pages, this is just something that I would correct in a later version of Bloodhoney if you possibly can. In the next couple of pages, we see the amalgamation of the frog DNA and structure with the cybernetics of Chelsin to create Cyberfrog. One little snippet of dialogue that's a little bit problematic is that the developing fetal energy mass was amalgamating me and a frog, and is not the proper word to use here. When you amalgamate with. So just a little technical note, but people who are familiar with some of these words are going to catch this. You may as well smooth the road bumps for them. Next, we have the next few pages actually go pretty smoothly. You've got the introduction of the other embryo, the twin of Cyberfrog, which actually comes into contact with a salamander and becomes Salamandroid later on. Next, we have Chelsin describing Cyberfrog's capabilities, giving a test run, showing what he's capable of, and describing his mission, and then sending him off to be the protector of Earth. All of this is pretty standard, and there's not a lot of changes between this and the finished version, and it all flows pretty smoothly. This particular page I just wanted to cite here because there are a couple of changes that are made between here and the finished version, largely having to do with these tick noises. Now, I like this in the sense that these tick noises are over the oncoming form of the creature, which we haven't gotten to see yet. And if you want to expose the reader to a feeling of increasing dread, then taking these tick noises and making them bigger as the creature finally comes into focus, overwhelming focus, it turns out in the last panel, then I say that's a very good move. This is actually reduced and downplayed in the finished product, which I think is a good idea because as it turns out, Salamandroid, although being a hulking, monstrous figure, is really a sweetheart in his character. And so to introduce him in a horror vein and then switch it around so that he's actually a really, really sweet and nice guy is kind of a bait and switch that you don't need in the origin. And I think that must have been detected either by Ben Sciver himself or by somebody who was editing for him and saying, you may as well play this down. And I think that works to good effect. In fact, in this particular sequence, instead of saying, "You are my mother," in the finished product, it says, "Are you my mother?" which again speaks to Salamandroid's relative innocence and emotional purity. One thing that I have a little bit of complaint about is that we see Salamandroid here for the first time, but we've got Chelsin obscuring so much of his lower body and physique that we don't really know what all he looks like. We'll find out on the next page, but still, it's kind of like, here's your opportunity to show the kid off, and unfortunately, we've got the mom sitting right in the way. So a little bit of domineering mom there as far as panel distribution goes. So anyway, Salamandroid is sent off on his mission, and then we get to see Cyberfrog descending into a kind of despair because he's gone out into the world to be mankind's protector. He's going out, and we're not really getting to see what it is he's doing. Which I think is a little bit problematic at this point. We don't get a montage page of his exploits, which according to the original Harris comics and other comics that he appeared in, have to do with fighting in defense of humanity against bug-themed villains. You know, frogs being the natural predator of bugs. You would have characters like Deathfly. You would have characters like Rumblebee, and these would be bug-themed characters of which he was basically predating on. And fighting their crime and fighting organized crime as well. There's some human enemies as well. But the main point of this page, I understand, is to show that humanity does, by and large, does not accept him. And his mood goes from bad to worse. He starts off a very joyous, optimistic crime fighter and then becomes somebody who does it because he has to. There is one little blooper that makes it into the finished version that is actually not here in the preview. In the preview, it says correctly, he did not look like one of their Boy Scouts. Just an alert that in the finished copy, it says he did not look like on of their Boy Scouts. So that is a typo that needs to be corrected in later printings. Next, we have Heather Swain. Cyberfrog is going to meet her. This is going to be Cyberfrog's one true friend. And you can see here a little bit of what I like to say the montage effect, because you notice the clothing of this guy who she's kneeing in the nuts on this page. It's the same guy on the next page, but he's wearing different clothes, and that implies that there has been some stretch of time. We're not looking at the same fight. We're looking at two different points in time, and it does make you wonder what goes on in between those 2 points in time. And that's an excellent way to sell prior material. The fact that you can't see what happens between page 1 and page 2 here piques the reader's curiosity and makes the reader say, hey, what exactly is going on that I'm missing out on? And as it happens, he does have a Cyberfrog warts and all book, which collects all of his 90s material. So you have the opportunity to pick that up if you should so desire. But here, we do have a little bit of dialogue problematic stuff in the finished copy that does not appear in the preview. So I'm going to focus on this lower half of the second page for a moment, because I want to take a look at a couple of things that were actually done correctly in the preview, but not done correctly in the finished work. And one of those things was there is this dialogue balloon here that gets merged into this dialogue balloon in the first panel. So the third panel dialogue balloon gets merged into the first one. Why is this important, and why does this hurt? This dialogue balloon by itself is saying, and Trickron, that's the name of Cyberfrog, and Trickron was there to save her, Heather Swain. And these two panels specifically are him saving her. This is him first taking her out of the realm of danger, and then also him encouraging her and saying, you don't give up. You don't ever give up. I will always look out for you, and I promise. And so that is him saving her. And then very wisely, this panel 3 dialogue balloon says, and she, him. And maybe it was thought that there's too much space between here and here, so that it wasn't clear to the reader that and she, him was a continuation of this, but that's really not a problem. And the fact that in these two panels, she is now comforting him about his despair over the fact that nobody accepts him for looking the way that he does. He's a cybernetic frog, and mankind by and large does not accept having these humanoid amphibians just walking around. So he's basically telling her they all think I'm a monster, and she's encouraging him by being a true friend to him. And so, and she, him, perfectly starts off this small sequence of panels. Likewise, so the first thing that I would say is do not move and she, him from panel 3 into panel 1. Bad idea. Number 2, there is this line, they all think I'm a monster. And when he says that, it's true. You go back to that previous page, and it shows people freaking out over his appearance, and they already think he's a monster. Now, for some reason, in the finished copy of Bloodhoney, the word will is introduced. They will all think I'm a monster. They already think he's a monster now. I don't know why that word was added in there, and it doesn't really make any sense. So that is my second point. Don't change they all think I'm a monster to they will all think I'm a monster in panel 3. Let's see. Moving on to the next page, we have Heather Swain visiting Cyberfrog in his apartment again. And while she's on the bus, she's advised by the bus driver that this isn't a nice part of town. And she says, I'm not scared of nothing, anything. I'm not exactly sure what that duality is supposed to mean, that I'm not scared of nothing, anything. That could easily be pared down to I'm not scared of nothing, and it could also be pared down further than that to I'm not scared. Now, if you pare it down all the way to I'm not scared, what it's doing is it's saying the reason she's not scared is because Cyberfrog's in town. We know this. We know that this is where Cyberfrog lives, and therefore, she's under his protection. She has nothing to worry about. And so, because this page is a lot about their bonding and the quality of their friendship, I'm thinking that I'm not scared is the most well conserved and concise and meaningful to that overall theme uh, iteration of what you could say here. Now, you could bump it up a step to say, I'm not scared of nothing, and make that just a general statement about her personality. That's also perfectly fine. You can just say that this is part of Heather Swain's personality, that she is a generally fearless girl. Going up a step, though, and saying, I'm not scared of nothing, anything, the only thing that I could possibly think of is if she's trying to correct her own speech to show that she's trying to do self improvement, even as she's being an encouragement to Cyberfrog. So she's trying to better herself by speaking more clearly. So that's kind of a possibility as well. And if that's what's intended, then fine, leave that in. Uh, One item here that gets changed in the finished book is that those two white dialogue balloons that Heather is speaking, they get compressed together so that there's no longer this little extension between them. And that's not good, because this I could eat comes immediately after this dialogue balloon. And if these two are squished together, you don't know that he is supposed to be speaking next after the smaller dialogue balloon. Here it's done perfectly. This is perfect exactly the way it is. But for some reason, this gets squished in. And so you wind up reading this dialogue first, this dialogue second, and then you see I could eat. So it gets things out of sequence. So the next thing that I would say is restore this separating bridge between the first and second dialogue balloons of Heather so that Cyberfrog can get this word in edgewise. The last little item that I thought was that I decided to nitpick on was this "it's" that's right preceding her describing the tattoo that she got of him on her shoulder. So she went and she got a tattoo of him on her shoulder. She shows it to him, and he says, "What's that?" And she says, "It's supposed to be you." And it's a kind of a funny thing there, except she's got this preceding "it's." And I don't know what that's supposed to mean. It almost sounds like she's a little bit hurt that he doesn't immediately recognize himself on her. And maybe that's the intent. Maybe it's to show that their friendship is still kind of working the bugs out, so to speak. Not everybody has perfect relationships, and so they may not be on a perfect back and forth kind of patter yet. But considering that this page is supposed to illustrate how closely that they've bonded, as far as I can tell, then because she's basically bringing him food and then showing that hey, I got a picture of you permanently etched on my body now, to show how close that they're bonding. This kind of "it's" that's thrown in there, it makes her sound a little bit hurt by his gruffness, matter of factness, just not recognizing it altogether. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe that shows that he can even rub the wrong way on her, as well as other people. But it all depends on what the intent of the panel is. If the panel is just to show how good friends that they've become, I would remove that word. So the last couple of pages are really what drew me into wanting to purchase the book. And what's sad is that the thing about these 2 pages coming up, we can see that they've met Salamandroid. Another thing that's not shown, which is another nice tie back to saying, hey, if you want to actually see how these people met, or how Salamandroid met the other 2, you need to go back and buy one of the prior books. That's one of the nice things about this page. One of the other nice things about this page is that you start with Chell Sin's narration, and the color of the narration starts to change as you go down the page, and as she is informing you that everything is lost, that everything is turning to crap. And finally, you get down to the point where it's white print on black dialogue balloons, and the last page with Chelsin talking in this, just absolutely morose tone, you could almost say, color tone. And this really sold me on wanting to see more. I had to see more after this. And it's sad that in the last pages of the finished product, this one change did not make it in. We don't see a change going from light text to or light balloons to dark balloons. I would have liked to have seen that happen, and maybe the kind of uneven jumbling of the text, because that's what really drew me in and made me think I want to see what happens next. And the other thing that made me want to see what happens next is the fact that this has largely been a 17-page montage for the most part. We've seen a montage of how Cyberfrog came to be, how Chelsin came to Earth, spawned Cyberfrog, spawned Salamandroid, he met Heather Swain, and now here is the comfortable setup, and we're about to get into the actual action. I'm very curious to know how the actual story is handled now that I've seen how a montage has taken place. So I'm about to, as far as I can tell, enter into a new mode of storytelling in part two, and I'm excited to find out what that is like. And so that is one of the main drives, as well as this very much compelling change of tone, change of color in the dialogue balloons that makes you think that everything is about to change. One other thing that I did like about Bloodhoney, at least chapter one altogether, was that there was pretty solid characterization. It's not in-depth characterization. I can't call it that, but it's very solid characterization. You get a very good feel for each of the characters, be it Chelsin, be it Salamandroid, be it Cyberfrog, be it Heather Swain. You get a good sense of who these characters are at their core. And that's a great talent to have. You don't want all your characters to sound the same or come across the same. You want them to have very distinct personalities, and Van Sciver carries that off very, very well. So, if you want to get the Cyberfrog Bloodhoney Ultimate Collection, I will provide the link for that. You can pick that up for $20 plus shipping and tax. I'll probably put it around the $30 range. And then, if you enjoy that, you also have the chance to pick up Cyberfrog 2 Wrecked Planet, along with its companion comic, Salamandroid Death Sting. And that is going to be part 2 in the series. Part 3, which I believe is to be called Red Extermination, will likely come out sometime next year. And that, I think, is going to be the end of it for me. So I appreciate your following along. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to see you watching, or, boy, that'd be creepy, though, because, I mean, I'm not going to actually be stalking you or anything like that. I tell you what, I'm just going to say goodbye. I'll talk to you later.